All right, so we're going to be looking at zero exponents and negative exponents today. And so just a real quick thing on zero exponents. Anytime you have a zero as an exponent, your answer is always 1, no matter what it is. So here's x to the 0 power equals 1. 2 to the 0 power equals 1. Negative 543 to the 0 power equals 1. Okay, so no matter what, it always equals 1. Now, if you had something that looked like this, what's inside equals 1, but then the negative has to go with it, okay? So you kind of have to think about what is the 0 affecting. So in here, the 0 is affecting only the 5. Here, the 0 is affecting the whole thing, and so the whole thing becomes 1. So do be careful about that part. But other than that, 0 exponents always become 1. All right, so now negative exponents. So the easiest thing to remember is that we don't like negative exponents. So we're hoping to make them positive, okay? And so by doing that, we move them, okay? And so if I think of this as like a fraction, I'm going to move it to the other side of the fraction to make it become positive. So now the 8 to the 5th power, the negative's gone, okay, is on the bottom. But I can't just leave the top blank. So I need to put a 1 up there. We're not really flipping the inequality, okay? Really remember that always when there's something that's not there, it's always 1. So, so just be careful that we're not really flipping, okay? So again, we're going to move it. So now the 3 to the 9th power, now it's positive, right? Because that's what it's asking for. Change it so that it's positive, is on the bottom, and then we can't leave a blank, so we put the 1, okay? Move it here. So z to the 2nd power, now it's positive. Move this. Now the p to the 4th is positive, okay? All right, now it says evaluate each expression. So evaluate means it actually wants an answer, not an exponent, but we need to get rid of that negative before we do so. So just like above, we're going to move it. So now we have negative 6 to the positive 5th power. And there's our 1. And we're not taking away that negative because it's in that parentheses. So the 6 still stays negative. It's the 5 that changes. Okay, so now we think about how to find that answer. Okay, well, so if you put in your calculator negative 6 raised to the 5th power, there you go, you get negative 7,776. So this becomes 1 over negative 7,776. And there's your final answer. Be very careful with that negative, all right? Now I put it in my calculator so it stayed there, but if you're doing it by hand, remember that if you have an odd number, so that 5 tells you you're going to have 5 negatives, and an odd number of negatives stays negative, okay? Let's look here. So we get 1 over 8 to the 4th power. So then 8 to the 4th power is 4,096. Okay, 1 over 2 to the 9th power. So 2 to the 9th is 512. And here we get 1 over negative 7 to the 3rd power. So again, because the 3 is odd, my answer is going to stay negative, and 7 to the 3rd power is 343. All right, now let's look at the next set. It says write it with a negative exponent. So now it wants us to go backwards. So you can see they're all positive. So to make it negative, again, we're going to move it. So now it's going to go up to the top. And so now we get 2 to the negative 9th. Okay, I'll come back to that one in a second. We're going to move it so that it now becomes e to the negative 5th. We're going to move it so now it becomes 7 to the negative 4th. Now, let's look at 1 over 64. So we could say that that is to the first power. And so we could change this if we move it to 64 to the negative first. But we could also change 64 to be something that has a exponent. So 64, we could divide by 2. And so 2 raised to the 6th power is 64. Or 4 raised to the 3rd power is also 64. So a couple of ways that we could write it. So if we change these, I could have 2 to the negative 6 and 4 to the negative 3, and all of them would eventually come out to be 1 over 64, just like we did above. Okay, so either way. All right, so it says simplify these expressions using positive exponents. Okay, so so if you notice here, these are already positive. But it's a division problem, which means we get to subtract our exponents. So this actually becomes 5 minus 2. And so that becomes 6 to the 3rd power, which, if you put that in your calculator, is 216. So both of these answers are correct. Okay, but look at number 14. They're both negative. So that means we have to move them both. So we end up with 1 over n squared times 1 over n cubed. Now, this is a multiplication problem, which means we get to add our exponents. So this becomes 1 over n2 plus 3, which is 1 over n to the 5th. There's your final answer. Okay, look at number 15. This is the one that's negative, so we're going to move it. So the w to the 3rd power stays up top. But now we're moving w to the 1st power also up top. Because it was negative, now we want it positive. So then it becomes a multiplication problem, which means we get to add the exponents. So we get w to the 4th power. Okay, look at number 16. They're both negative. So this one needs to go down, and this one needs to go up. So now we have k to the 6th power over k to the 4th power, right? They just flipped places because they were both negative, so they had to move. Then it's a division problem, so we get to subtract the exponents. So this is 6 take away 4, and so k to the 2nd power is your final answer. Okay, so make sure that you're moving your exponents if they're negative, and then going back to your other rules of if we add the exponents or if we multiply the exponents if they're being raised to the power.